There was once a time when most of the milk consumed was raw milk, and it came from cows that were out grazing in pastures like ours. And there wasn't a whole lot of problem with that milk, right? It was pretty normal to have a milkman come by and bring you raw milk in glass jugs that came from pasture-raised animals. This raw milk contains proteins and nutrients that are actually very good for your body, very good for your gut. There's always going to be some risks, though, right? When you eat raw, I mean, there's risks to eating the chemicals that are in the preservatives of food today. We read about those risks all the time. There's long-term death risks from a lot of that stuff, long-term cancer problems, gut disease problems, etc. But those risks are okay by the regulating agencies. The short-term risks, or back then you had some moderate risks from raw milk of some bacterial infections, you know, getting some loosey stools every now and then. There were risks, but they were relatively moderate because it was a very natural environment of raising the cow, milking the cow, and bringing that raw milk to the table. There wasn't a whole lot in between there. So what they started doing with milk was they started pasteurizing it. And what that meant was that the old-fashioned way of pasteurizing it is they'd bring it up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature is enough to destroy most of the enzymes in the milk. Most of the enzymes that were destroyed in pasteurization would actually protect against pathogens. They would attach to vitamins and make them more easily absorbable to your body. I mean, your body was designed to absorb this stuff naturally. So what we started to do just to make sure that the milk was safe was we would heat it up to this 150 degrees, and we'd take out a lot of those benefits from pasteurized milk. High temperature pasteurization started coming in, after the old-fashioned way of heating up to 150 degrees. It's also known as flash pasteurization, where they'd heat it up to 161 degrees. Now, at 161 degrees, you actually kill all of the enzymes that are in the milk, and you denature some of the proteins in the milk. So now the milk has become a very low nutritional value at 161 degrees. For those of you who like to drink hot milk, think about it that way. If you heat it up over 150, and this is raw milk, I mean, the milk you buy in the grocery store is not even high temperature pasteurized. I'm going to get to what you're drinking in the grocery store in a second. Traditionally, you had pasteurized at 150 degrees, and you had high temperature or flash pasteurized at 161. And by the time you hit 161 degrees, you kill most of the enzymes, destroy most of the proteins. You're not getting half of the benefits, or not even 3/4 of the benefits of what that milk was meant to produce to your body in the first place. Now, ultra pasteurization is what you drink from the grocery store. What they do in ultra pasteurization is they actually have the milk move across stainless steel plates at 284 degrees. 180. Imagine what you killed at 161 degrees. Now we're going to heat that milk up to 284 degrees. And what that does, it was designed to kill, the endospores of hibernating pathogens that could come back to life in the right conditions for the milk, right? But in the process, you kill all the proteins, all the enzymes, and all the nutrients in the milk. The milk at that point is so dead, right? There's nothing in it. It's killed everything in the milk. It actually has a shelf life of an extended period of time without refrigeration. The reason why they refrigerate it in U.S. Stores is because when they started ultra pasteurization in Europe, and they brought the concept to America, Americans were kind of weirded out by the fact that they were drinking milk that wasn't refrigerated on a shelf. So they refrigerated it. It lasts maybe a little longer refrigerated, but for grocery stores, this was a great product because they could stock it, they could put it on the shelves, and it would last for a very, very long time, whereas raw milk wouldn't really last that long. As it turns out, there was a study conducted in 2019 on rats. They study everything on rats. Anyway, there was this 2019 study that found that processing milk causes the formation of protein oxidation products, which impair spatial learning and memory loss in rats. So as it turns out, that overprocessed milk really isn't that good for you, is it? So how did we come this far? In the summer of 1983, an outbreak of listeriosis occurred in Massachusetts. 49 people became sick, and 14 of those, 19%, died. Listeria is the bad actor among pathogens. Most pathogens make people sick but don't kill them. Listeria, on the other hand, often kills, especially the very young, the elderly, and the immune compromised. Listeria most commonly occurs in deli meats, seafood, raw vegetables, soft cheeses, and poultry. But the 1983 outbreak was different. It came from pasteurized milk. Imagine that. Pasteurized milk is what caused this outbreak. There's always been a moderate chance of getting it in any of those foods, including raw milk. But now it was happening in pasteurized milk. So you have to understand what happened throughout the history of milk production to understand how it ended up getting into pasteurized milk. Pasteurized milk, which was being hit at 150 to 161 degrees if it was high pasteurized milk. About a year after that, a huge outbreak of Salmonella typhimurium occurred in Illinois, a second wave in 1985. The pathogen was found resistant to most common forms of antibiotics. 2 surveys determined the number of persons who were actually affected yielded estimates of 168,791 and 197,581 persons, making this the largest outbreak of salmonellosis ever identified in the United States. At least 5 people died out of the 170 to 100 or 200,000. The outbreak affected people in 6 states: Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, and Indiana. Health officials concluded that the milk was contaminated after pasteurization, which persisted in the plant despite the efforts to eradicate it. So this is where they went to ultra-pasteurized, because what they found was that it managed to exist in sleeper cells until they were able to regenerate in the perfect conditions of the milk storage. So clearly the 1980s had a lot going on, which is why we moved from pasteurized, high pasteurized to ultra pasteurized milk. But there's a bigger history to all of this that I think you need to understand as a consumer who's choosing where their products come from. Mass consolidation in the agricultural industry really kind of started picking up in the 1930s with pigs, and in the 1950s with chickens. And you see this today. You have these factory farms with these animals in very tight quarters. Diseases and things have a stronger environment to thrive inside those bins. They have to keep those environments very sterile. There's a famous quote by Earl Butz in the 1970s, who was the agricultural secretary, who basically said, "Get big or get out." And maybe what he meant was get indoors or get out. By the mid-1980s, so we're backtracking back up to all these outbreaks in pasteurized milk, this concept of getting big and getting inside started really taking on in the dairy industry. The U.S. Department of Agriculture was actually advising dairy farmers to keep their cows inside and grain-fed. So now, how do you maintain the health of animals that are living in confinement? It would be like, if I put my cows out on a pasture and I had too many cows out there, what they'd start doing is they'd start overeating the ground, and then they would most likely start getting worms. Whereas if I have wide open pastures with lots of things for them to eat on, they don't have to eat over the top of each other constantly, the chances of them getting worms, or the chances of them correcting worms, the chances of them getting worms are much smaller. The chances of them being able to correct it on their own with the nutrition that they're able to get out on the field is much higher. So when you put animals into confinement or in a tighter space, even in an open field, when you have too many animals in a field, you get more diseases, you get more things like worms, you get more pathogens. If you put them into confinement indoors, now you have even a greater risk. So how do you mitigate against that risk? How do you stop these animals from contracting pathogens and other things that could cause problems with our milk products, problems with our meat products? There's a simple answer to all this: antibiotics and vaccines. And what's interesting is you started seeing this trend in the mid-1980s, right? And suddenly you have pathogens that are able to withstand antibiotics, because nature is a constant evolution, right? And so what happens is these pathogens become stronger against the antibiotics. So you suddenly start having antibiotic-resistant pathogens. And then the only way to get rid of those pathogens is through ultrapasteurization, of heating up the milk to 284 degrees and making sure that there is absolutely nothing in the milk of nutritional quality for even the consumer. And so then the question then becomes, you know, as you as a consumer, is that what you want to be eating? Do you want to be eating this food that's been packed with all of these things? Or would you rather be eating food that has been naturally grown, food that hasn't had contact with these things, that's coming from an environment that's been free of them? Because chances are, the cleaner the environment, the cleaner the food, the safer it actually is for you. At the end of the day, you know, these steps that have been taken through science, these steps that people have taken to try and improve our food supply system, they weren't done with bad motivations, okay? They were done to try and supply people with more affordable food. And they've reached the point where they have affordable food on shelves. Well, they used to be affordable, now it's not affordable anymore. But they were able to make food available to many, many consumers on a mass scale. But that came with a lot of costs and a lot of consequences. And the other costs and consequences of those is that we've consolidated the industry